Okay, so we're live here with Carlos Fraga.
Right, correct.
Yeah, I even got it then. So my name is Trish Triumphos from Downtown Book and Sound, and we're here with local author Carlos Fraga, who wrote this amazing little book. I'm gonna hold it up here so you can see. There we go. It's one, or you can. Here you go.
Here you go.
It's 100
Essential Spanish sayings. Yeah.
or 100 dichos
Esenciales.
esenciales. Okay, that's awesome. So thank you for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you being here with
My
us.
pleasure.
And we got the hot rods going by. So those other books go up on the shelf too. Yeah. So I want to thank you for being here and for joining us and for agreeing to do a little book event, an author event with us. I'd like to start by asking you a few questions, and so first of all, where are you from originally?
So I grew up in Southern California, Los Angeles area, San Fernando Valley. My parents were both from Mexico. My father originally came to work in the fields. There were ag fields in the San Fernando Valley at that time, and then moved to work at General Motors.
Oh, wow.
Assembly plant.
Which one?
In Van Nuys.
Okay.
And so I I'm one of 9 children. 6 of my siblings were born and raised in Mexico, and the last 3 of us were born in the United States, and I'm the last of the 9.
Wow, that's pretty exciting stuff. So was your father one of the Bracero?
Right. Yep.
From that program?
Right. He came from through the Bracero program.
Oh, that's great.
Right.
And then how did you end up settling here in Salinas?
So it's sort of a
or here in this area, I should say.
Yeah. So basically, what got me into the Central Coast was the Monterey Institute of International Studies, which is now known as the Middlebury Institute.
Right.
And so I did I did graduate work there and got my master's in international policy. From Monterey Institute, and that was my exposure to the area, and I've always loved the area. But after graduate school, I went back to Los Angeles, and then I worked for the federal government for a while, and then I decided to come back to the Central Coast. And when I did, I had to reinvent myself. So what am I going to do with a graduate degree, international policy, and so I found my career path in risk management.
Oh.
And so for 20 plus years, I've been doing risk management, and which is one of the reasons that led me to develop the book, 100 Essential Spanish Sayings. So my graduate work got me here. I left, I came back, and I did a lot of work for the ag business, which is the engine of economics, or engine of our economy here. Mm-hmm. on the Central Coast. So I got working doing risk management for large ag firms. And with that, I did a lot of training. And so I started to hear a lot of these expressions that the field workers were using, and I started to jot them down. And, after 10 years in my career, I put together the book. So this booklet here is actually like 10 years old. It has gone through some, refinements through it, but the backstory to the booklet is organizational excellence. And there's 4 central themes to the booklet, because there's a lot of dichos, there's a lot of sayings in Spanish. And so I deliberately, methodically chose those that fell under one of four topics. One, which is health and safety, which is why the first one says, la salud es la mejor riqueza.
Mm-hmm.
And
that means health is the greatest wealth.
Right.
Well, and that's so important, right? We know with that, in Spanish, there's a toast. It's salud, amor y dinero, y tiempo para disfrutarlos. So it's health is the first thing. Without health, you can't enjoy anything else.
And that's why it's the first one. So the four themes are: one is health and safety. The other one is leadership. The third one is the importance of learning or continuous improvement. And then the fourth one is standards of conduct. So if you look at those 100 dichos in there, they're going to fall into one of those categories. And so for me, if you want to have a well-run business organization, you've got to really engage your workforce, and you have to have those four things working well within the organization: health and safety, leadership, continuous improvement, and standards of conduct that everybody shares.
Yeah, and you have to, you really have to work in it as a team with that. Even if you have leadership, but the teamwork of working together with all those what's the word I'm trying to think of? So my brain is confused with Spanish and English now.
Well, the leadership component really is what brings them all together. So you got to have a strong leadership component to integrate them all. Mm-hmm. That's why I put that in there. It's a key component, but they're all related and inseparable. You can't do one without. I mean, if you only do one, you're not gonna achieve a certain level. You get a certain level of success and profitability for an organization, but you got to do them all and do them really well. And I found that most organizations struggle with any of them. So at any rate, that's why I put that together. So I would do, and I continue to do consulting and training for organizations, and I bring the book, and I use it to engage. Here in the Central Coast, most of the workforce are Hispanic. Spanish is dominant.
Right.
As a way to connect with them and as a way to get them to at least listen to the message that I'm trying to convey. And that's always the challenge. But if you can give them something that they've already heard and then develop it into something, how it relates to them and at work or at home, then you have more success of it being a meaningful training. There'll be a takeaway for them from the training, if nothing else. Oh, I remember that dicho, and here's how we used it.
That's really good. So you're connecting with someone's culture, right, by using the Spanish sayings that we would have grown up with as children. Right. Just like we have sayings in English that we grow up with and that we remember forever. Like my dad always said, when as kids, if we did something really well, he'd say, "Now you're cooking with gas," right? Which I knew it was a good thing. I didn't understand until much older that it meant, oh, instead of a wood fire, now you have like a gas stove, like you're modern and you're like cutting edge. And I was like, oh, now it makes sense,
Yeah, and sometimes I would use these. They're great conversation starters. So when I want to broach the topic of health and safety, I will, greet the audience. Hola, buenos días, buenas tardes. How are you today? And then I'll say, okay, who can finish this saying for me? Más vale prevenir que, and then someone will always say lamentar, because they know the expression. Mm-hmm. And from there, I say, okay, so we know this saying. Now let's talk about it a little bit more, and let's talk about it, how it relates to here in the workplace, or even how it relates to you at home with your children. But yeah, great icebreakers, conversation starters. Even when I got here and I was talking to your retail clerk, and he read one of them, and we developed that into, like, okay, how does it relate to what you've done in culinary school? And so every one of those is a great lesson for people to take away from just that old expression.
Well, that makes a lot of sense because nada es imposible.
Right.
So tell me, so I noticed in this little booklet that there's quite a few there's quite a few let me see, I'm gonna kind of hold it here, illustrations, and I'm gonna see if I got here. This is one of my favorites because I see this one a lot. Can you tell me why you put these illustrations in?
So the Aztec warriors, so there's a couple of reasons. One, because the indigenous Indian, the Aztecs, are part of our Mexican culture.
Mm-hmm.
The other reason is that artwork was very ubiquitous when I was growing up. It was everywhere. It was, we had the calendars with these images every year, new ones, and so I grew up seeing all this stuff, and it really resonated with me. And so when I created the book, I wanted to give something substantive in terms of the sayings, but I also wanted to give something visual that resonated with me. And so throughout the book, there are iconic images of popular Mexican indigenous art. So I have some of Diego Rivera's celebrated artwork in there. You have the Aztec warriors. You have Emilio Zapata. You have La Virgen de Guadalupe, which are all very iconic. If you're Hispanic or Mexican, you will like look at those and you go, oh yeah, I totally get it.
And you have Loteria.
Right, the Loteria game. Okay, so Loteria is every Mexican household, just like Monopoly is in American culture. Yeah. Everybody has a Loteria game. We all played Loteria as kids, right? Mm-hmm. So again, the intent was to give a visual connection to the book as well as a substantive language connection. So when the people look at it, it's visually appealing, but then it's when they read it, they're like, oh yeah, I get it. Yeah, oh yeah, I used to hear that one from my cousin, from my grandfather, from whomever.
One of the things I found very interesting with carrying this little book is that I had a lot of English speakers buy it because they're interested in learning some Spanish sayings. So it was good for them to see a Spanish saying and then written in English as well, so that they could understand. Because there's those kind of idioms in some cases. Right. It's not really an idiom, but like the dichos, sometimes like they don't translate exactly.
Right.
Right. So like having to be able to understand. The biggest thing for me was to understand humor in Spanish. Right. So being able to understand some kind of, I don't know, fundamental cultural sayings is really a great tool for people who are learning Spanish as well.
And that's a great point. And there were some that I had heard that I didn't know. I couldn't understand it. So like one that's in there, it's todos hijos o todos entrenados, and I'm like, how does that translate? So what does it mean first, and then how do you translate that into English? So the way it was explained to me is you either treat us all as stepsons. Mm-hmm. You treat the stepsons as you treat you treat us all as one family, not a certain set of rules for one the stepchildren, a different set of rules for your biological children. Mm-hmm. Todos hijos o todos entrenados is the expression to say we're all treated the same. And so the equivalent in English is what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Mm-hmm. Everybody's treated equally. There's no favoritism. It's all the same. And so, and that's really, for me, in industry, it's in industry, companies have labor issues because of the labor law issues because of that, because people are not treated the same. And so it's a very relevant one for industry, because you need, labor law says you need to treat so this is the discrimination.
Yeah, like if two people do the exact same thing wrong and only one person is written up,
right,
then they're not being treated the same.
Right.
So that's not cool.
It's very relevant. So a lot of these sayings, as I was said earlier, they are tied back to industry, but you can still use them. You can still use them at home. They still have a value in your everyday life. And so, the book really is an excellent tool, but it's also something you can just have a beer and enjoy, and just, or you were saying, language students, I just want to know how to convey another idea in another way. So now you just elevate your vocabulary, your ability to communicate, because now you have, a dicho.
Yeah, well, I love that, and I really think it's such a great tool for anyone, whether it's in industry, whether it's a small business, where we want to understand each other better and kind of cross cultures a little bit with our understanding, or just like just a language learner, or just for fun, just
and at home too.
Yeah,
I mean, you can use a lot of these with your children, as one of the, I had a friend that used this one a lot. El buen juez por su casa empieza, is the good judge begins at home. In other words, don't be judging others until you judge yourself.
Yeah, it's the same as like people who live in glass houses should not throw stones, right? So it's a very similar kind of a saying, but it's interesting how much common English and Spanish have in some of these sayings.
Well, they've been around for so long.
Yeah.
And so anyway, there's some, it could be a novelty. It could be a very valuable tool for a trainer. It could be a tool for a language learner. So there's a backstory and more to the book than just looking at it and say, oh, it's just a collection of 100. They were all deliberately chosen to fill those 4 themes, and the visuals were put there so that people could identify with the Mexican culture in particular, because all those really are Mexican images you find in Mexico and even in the Mexican neighborhoods here.
Oh yeah, we just see papel picado, the little paper banners.
Exactly.
They're always hanging around whenever there's a party or some kind of a celebration. Of course, Diego Rivera is an amazing, iconic painter, Mexican painter and muralist.
Right.
When I went to his house museum in Guanajuato, I discovered, I didn't know that he had lived in France and was a Cubist painter, like with the same with like Picasso. And when he came back to Mexico after the revolution, they were hiring artists to paint murals to tell the story, and they weren't going to hire him because they saw his art was just too confusing and that the people would never understand it.
Right.
And so he actually changed his style of painting to be more like based on the Mayan and Mayan glyphs.
Right.
So these big kind of rounded people that feel like they're solid, they're just part of the earth, like almost like stones have come alive, and they're embracing you,
Right.
And so once he did that, then he was accepted to paint these murals, and he became one of the most, and he's one of the big 3, right? It was Siqueiros. Who's the other one? Shoot. Orozco?
Yeah,
and Rivera.
I couldn't tell you who.
Yeah, those are the three big Mexican muralists from that era that really like changed the art of Mexico and became not just iconic but world renowned for their work.
Well, and his wife Frida Kahlo also, she.
Oh, she was amazing, but she really didn't paint for anyone else but herself.
Right.
You know, and people called her a surrealist painter, and she said, "I am not a surrealist." She says, "I do not paint dreams. I paint my own reality."
Right.
I'm like, "You go, girl." And I think she's really become an iconic symbol of feminine power and overcoming some of the worst tragedies that anyone could possibly imagine. I mean, polio, getting hit by a bus. I mean, the fact that she survived that accident was absolutely, and I won't go into the details because it's pretty gory, but really, really great stuff. And so I highly recommend this book. In fact, why don't you hold the copy up and people can see it? I highly recommend this book. And Carlos is here tonight, and will sign copies for you if you want. We're doing a special that all the books are $1 off, so you can come and grab your copy tonight, or anytime that we're open. Come by and see us. There was one beach show that I remember that I really liked, that of course that isn't in your book because you're really more geared towards the workplace and those kind of things. But there's a saying that I heard, and when I heard it, I thought, this is so true. And it goes, piensan los enamorados que los otros tienen los ojos quebrados, which means in English, like, lovers imagine or think that nobody else can see them, can figure it out, And it's just one of those great sayings where it's like, oh my God, it's so true. And so as those kind of sayings are, they seem to ring really true. So I want to thank you for being here today and taking the time to go online with us. This will be recorded and saved on our YouTube channel and our Facebook page. So anyone can tune in anytime to see it, and you're welcome to share it with your friends. So thank you once again for being here for us.
Thank you.
And we'll sell lots of books. Let's see. So we're going to sign off. I forgot. It's not a touch screen.